Weirding Way Media.
Welcome to episode 130 of the Filmmakers podcast. This is Jamie Benning, your host, talking to you here from my house in London. As you may know, I went on my trip to Martha's Vineyard to shoot, hopefully, the final section of our documentary about production designer Joe Alves. If you donated to the GoFundMe, firstly, thank you so much. I literally could not have done it without you. Managed to raise just over £7,000, which paid for my flight, a car, accommodation, ferries, taxis, some audio gear, some hard disks. It was really amazing that you all put in that money and made the trip possible. It just couldn't have been done without it. And what an opportunity to grab shots with Joe and interviews with Joe and other people on the island and that place that he was originally in, scouting back in December 1973. Kind of a real pinch me goosebumps moment. I'm getting goosebumps again just talking about it. I'll be doing a report on that hopefully this month. I've also, bearing in mind, I've got a report to do as an episode about the screening of the original Star Wars film at the British Film Institute here in London as well. Have a bunch of other interviews that are sort of getting older and sitting in the inbox, if you like. But first of all, I just wanted to get this short episode out to you. This is an interview with Laurent Bouzereau. Now, Laurent is a documentary filmmaker that I've been admiring the work of for decades now. If you don't know who Laurent is, have a look at the making of Jaws or any of the behind-the-scenes stuff on Indiana Jones, or maybe you've read The First 10 Years, the book about Spielberg that he made. Laurent has been doing this behind-the-scenes stuff that I've been interested in and been doing myself. He's been doing it for decades, and his work is incredible. It's stuff that I revisit very often for inspiration. I actually bumped into Laurent on the Vineyard. We were at the Jaws 50 event at the Wharf Pub, and Paddy and I, my co-director, just went out of the back just to get some fresh air, and there was Laurent sitting on a bench just outside in this nice little quiet area in Edgartown. And I said, Laurent, Jamie Benning, I interviewed you for the podcast I'm making, the Joe Alves documentary. He said, oh yeah, Jamie, hi. I said, Laurent, you haven't got a second, have you? Could we just chuck a microphone on you and interview you? So we walked down to the wharf, exactly where Matt Hooper, Richard Dreyfuss's character, arrived all those years ago, and we interviewed him right there, just talking about the role of a production designer and his relationship with the director, and he gave us some great stuff. We'd actually like to get him for a proper sit-down interview next time we go out to Los Angeles, because we still do have a few other interviews to do, hopefully Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter as well, and we're looking to get Dean Cundy also next time we're out there, hopefully. Before I left for the island, I was given the opportunity to see Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story, the new National Geographic documentary that Laurent had directed. And unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the premiere out on the island. We were busy shooting stuff, but I did make it to the after party. I got a little swag bag one evening after 10 hours of shooting and a well-deserved drink in hand. So when I got back home, I was given the opportunity to interview Laurent about this documentary that he's done with both Nat Geo and Disney Plus, I should mention as well, Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story. And it premieres on Friday the 11th of July at 8 p.m. on National Geographic and will be available streaming on the same day. So Friday the 11th of July on Disney Plus as well. So here's my interview with Laurent, and I'll be back at the end for a little bit more jabbering on.
To me, making Jaws was a life-altering experience.
50 years, we're still talking about Jaws.
It was the first blockbuster.
It's this mystical connection between hero and monster.
This started me thinking about a career in movies.
Is there anything that you've never said about Jaws?
Let's find out. We were on the real ocean, and we were way out of our element for 5 months. And we all began going off the deep end, literally. The film was 100 days behind schedule, and 80% of the time the shark didn't work.
There was a strong undercurrent that the studio would close us down.
I was terrified I was going to be fired, but I never once felt like I wanted to quit. And when the film wrapped, I had a full-blown panic attack. But the success was fantastic.
It was sort of life-changing.
It's the film I've seen the most.
It wasn't just a movie, it was a pop culture phenomenon, like that.
It supercharged the language of cinema.
There have been movies made since using CG sharks that aren't nearly as good.
The film that I thought would end my career is the film that began it. Boom, 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 boom.
Laurent, you made that wonderful The Making of Jaws back in 1995. It was released, and people like me have watched that 100 times. It's part of the film's history in many ways. How challenging was it for you to revisit the film, 30 years later? And how difficult was it to find a new angle? Or did that passage of time really help in that regard?
Well, I knew that 50 years in anything is an important benchmark. So that I knew was going to be super unique. And I also knew through all my relationships with different directors and filmmakers and so on, that everybody I've ever talked to has mentioned Jaws, but they've all mentioned it for different reasons. So Guillermo comes at it differently from Jim Cameron, from Zemeckis or JJ, etc., or Jordan Peele. So I was excited to get everybody to finally reveal their connection to Jaws in a way that was, compelling but different.
I think the Kintner scene is a beautiful example of Spielberg's gift.
Every single choice he makes, it's about the tension and the paranoia and that sense of you don't know quite where to look.
The tension that's built with the cinematic devices in this scene are so immersive, so seamless and flawless.
It's got the wipes. It's got the split diopter.
And then when it hits, the push-pull zoom that Hitchcock pioneered.
It just brings the audience along in the perfect pacing, and then it's delivered.
All of this is in aid of putting you inside of Brody's experience of being on the beach that day when this terrible thing happens.
Well, in those days, I wasn't thinking about cinema. I was thinking about shots.
Now, I have to tell you, I was nervous about making this film, and I was nervous about being, criticized for doing something again, almost a remake of my original doc or something. And the second I sat down across Stephen for the first interview I did, and he was the first one I interviewed, I was reassured that it was not going to be the case, because I just felt that perspective, was so unique. And for him to open up about the human perspective of making Jaws and recognizing it as a people's movie about people, the sort of humanity that comes from this film is very different from a 20-year perspective. 20-year actually is not that long a time. It still belongs in the same world. Yes, you had Jurassic Park by then, and the film had broken down, the barrier from mechanical effects to CGI. But 50 years, that is really a milestone. And I know it was a milestone for me when I turned 50, so I figured it was the same for a movie.
There was nothing fun about making Jaws. It was a very, very hard thing to go out on the real ocean, be knocked around by the waves, by the currents.
One more time. Shark comes up.
And then we have to re-anchor, reposition the camera boat. Suddenly the electrical barge with the generators running the arcs is too far away. And then on top of all that, 80% of the time the shark didn't work.
The first mistake with the shark was they built it for fresh water.
What's the difference?
Well, electrolysis.
They built the shark in a hurry, and then they realized that salt water eats everything.
They tested the shark for the first time in the water, and we had at least 20 boats of tourists who had gathered around an area to watch the shark work. And we had the shark on a huge 90-foot platform 30 feet underwater. And at the press of a hydraulic button and pulling a lever back, supposedly the shark comes shooting out of the water head first. And this has absolutely happened. The shark came up tail first. Tail first, and it was like a 25-foot moon.
Some nights we'd go to the warehouse, and you'd see the sharks lined up there, and they were always working on it. And sometimes you'd get in the water, and you'd see the shark go, whoomp. You thought, oh my God, are they going to finish this movie?
Yeah, 20 years feels like it was almost too fresh in people's minds to have a true sort of understanding of the impact that film had had on them. And Steven seemed particularly open and very emotional. I think it's wonderful you captured those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when I sat down with him when I did the 20th anniversary, it was the second time I met him, and this is like what the 100th time I met him. There's a level of I'm comfortable with him. I hope he's comfortable with me. But the thing that's really fun is his enthusiasm. I remember toward the end of the first session, he mentioned this photo of him and Marty Scorsese. And he says something like, "Oh, have you seen it? It's in my office. Come with me. Bring the camera." And there's this level of this almost, childlike enthusiasm. He gives you 5,000%, and he knew, because I actually have had it, I included it in the documentary. I asked him, "Is there anything else to say?" And I think while there may not have been that much more new to say, there was a lot more to feel.
Yes.
And I think the feelings are really, I could have driven myself crazy just trying to figure out what's been said, what's not been said, what's been shown, what's not been shown. And to me, it was all about getting those stories and giving those stories a different perspective, like the theme of home, for example, which is something that has never been mentioned before, except for myself in my book about Steven, recognizing that those first 10 years, culminating with E.T. Phone Home, was all about finding home and being near home. And something that's a theme in the movie of Jaws, but is also the theme of the production. They just couldn't go home because they were just over schedule. So I think all of those things make for a very different perspective on the history and the legacy of the film. And, I hope people experience it that way. Also, at the time I made the first one, I was very much obsessed with, first of all, there was no internet. So all of my research was done in the backlot of Universal in bins where they told me there could be rattlesnakes in there and I had to wear gloves, and I was putting up folders and boxes and going to some kind of a Raiders of the Lost Ark sort of a warehouse in the valley to find folders and memos, and I had to rebuild everything on my own, so that was really much more of a mechanical approach, to the story. And here I was just like, oh, I want to get goosebumps when I'm talking to those people. And listen, the sad part also is that Dick Zanuck, David Brown, Susan Bacalini, Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw. Well, Robert was already passed on, but all those people are gone, and you realize that, and it's a great pride that I did capture them then, but here was really a tribute to them. So I don't want to say it's a celebration of Jaws, but it's an appreciation, and a brand new 50-year kind of analysis of why this is, in the museum of cinema, right up there next to Mona Lisa if you like painting, or Beethoven if you like music. So that's the way I feel.
And there was this big barrel right near the top of the water, and it's full of blood. He goes, "You're gonna take your raft out to that barrel, and all of a sudden all the blood starts shooting up like a rocket. And you see me go up and down. That's two guys lifting me in and out of the water, then pull you under and give you air."
Poor Jeff. He came up out of the water. He got all that stuff out of his eyes. And then he did it again, and it worked fine.
Yeah, it feels like your original film is the making of. This is the documentary about the legacy of. And it is wonderful to see, you've got Joe Alves in there, you've got Carl Gottlieb and Jeffrey Kramer, those guys that are still with us. And it's still wonderful to get their perspectives another 30 years on as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Great also to, you're always trying to find something new, something fresh. So it's great to see that 8mm footage of Stevens that hadn't been seen before. He's there looking at Bob Matty and looking at Joe Alves. That must have been a delight to be able to use.
Oh, well, I mean, since the first Jaws doc 20 years ago, he has transferred all of his home movies to a database, and they look fantastic. Even when I did John Williams, where I had access to his Super 8 films, and it was projected in IMAX for the premiere, the Man Chinese, no less. The Super 8 films look amazing. I was so nervous. I was just like, okay, this is going to look completely blurry, but no, it was amazing. So I really I would email Steven's archivist and said, "Do you have footage of Steven in his office at the time of blah blah blah? And do you have him interacting with Sid Sheinberg or Hal Barwood and Matthew Robbins?" And they would say, "Yes, we have footage of that." And I was just like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." So that was really fun.
Great. Well, listen, as I said to you last week on Martha's Vineyard, I've been a huge appreciator of your work, and I love your work. And thank you so much for what you do for us as fans and for filmmakers and for everybody else. It's a great documentary, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Jamie. And again, thanks so much for your kind words, and keep me posted on your docs and everything you're doing.
Will do. Thanks, Laurent.
Congrats. Take care.
Cheers, you too. Bye-bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was a short one. Laurent is a very busy man trying to get the message out about this film. So just a reminder that it's Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story. It premieres Friday, the 11th of July. That's this Friday at 8 p.m. on National Geographic, and streams on the same day on Disney+. Thank you to the folks at Disney+ and Nat Geo for getting me that documentary early to watch, and also for the interview with Laurent. And thank you to Laurent for that interview, that flash interview we did on the wharf on Martha's Vineyard. Still beavering away here at Filmmakers HQ. Paddy and I have been working quite a lot on the documentary since we got back, cutting together the stuff that we shot in Martha's Vineyard, along with the stuff we shot with Joe in 2022 and 2023. Things are taking shape slowly. It's very difficult to find the time for both of us to do this and get it done. It's usually a couple of hours each day. We'd love to get an editor on board to go through this and work with us and come up with ideas with us. Unfortunately, we just don't have the budget, so that's why this thing is taking so long. But we will get there. We'll keep chipping away. Coming up on the podcast, I've got plenty more interviews coming up with filmmakers, lots of behind-the-scenes stories. So stay tuned. Tell your friends about the podcast. Also, I should say there's a new ILM article out called ILM Evolutions, Animation from Rotoscoping to Rango. Now, this was an article I pitched back in, it must have been August last year. I was actually on holiday in Malta, in Gozo, and I was sitting by the pool and just coming up some ideas because I've been invited to write some articles for ILM. And I had an absolute blast making it. So just reading the blurb here, this is the ILM Evolutions series exploring ILM's 50-year legacy, and it kicks off with new interviews featuring original Star Wars animator Chris Cassidy and current ILM animation supervisors Rob Coleman and Hal Hickel. So this is a two-parter. This is the first part of a two-part. So I go from, the early days of their very beginnings and on Star Wars all the way up to Rango. I'll then be going beyond that in part 2, which is already written, all ready to go up. But do check that out on ilm.com/ILM-evolutions-50-animation-part-1. There's a lot of dashes in there. I'll tell you what, I'll put it on my show notes. I'll put it on my link tree, and hopefully you'll find it there. If you just search for ILM Evolutions Jamie Benning, you'll find it as well. ILM have been tweeting that out today being Monday the 7th. You'll be listening to this hopefully on the day of release, this podcast episode on Tuesday the 8th of July. Thanks for joining me. Keep letting me know if you have any ideas of who to interview. I've had a couple of people do that recently, saying here's somebody I think you should talk to, and I've been sorting those out. In the meantime, tell your friends about the podcast and about the work that I'm doing. And if anybody does want to donate to the GoFundMe still, it's still open. If you look for GoFundMe and Jamie Benning or GoFundMe and Joe Owls, you'll find it there. Take care. See you next time.